Hey, my name is Bianca Mauro. I'm the owner of BRM Production Management. And with me today is Taryn Longo. She's a friend and colleague and a semantic trauma therapist. Semantic, semantic didn't sound right when I came out of my mouth. It didn't sound right. And I even looked down at the note that I wrote when you said it the first time, and I'm not editing that out. I'm going to leave that the way. Yeah, no. So somatic trauma therapist. And we have been having conversations over the last 6 weeks about what's going on in the world and specifically how it impacts small business owners and artists alike, because we are both very tuned into those industries. And through our conversations, it dawned on both of us that this is information that we really wish that everyone had. I mean, mostly I wish that everyone had an opportunity to talk to Taryn and get her insight on some of the things that are happening right now and some validation for the way that I've been feeling as a business owner and some really powerful insights into how this impacts everyone on a day-to-day basis. So what we've decided to do is a series of short conversations. Today is the first one, and this one is centered around the meaning of what is trauma. So people consider trauma things like getting mugged or losing someone close to you. But through talking to Taryn, I realized that there's a much larger spectrum of what is traumatic. And not only is it situational, but it's also very personal. And so, Taryn, I would love for you to give us some insight, or me some insight, on what is happening right now. Why is it traumatic, and what is trauma?
Yeah. Thank you for having me, by the way. For you and
thank you for doing this
every single way. So I feel like there's different ways to explain trauma. I feel like for this purpose, a pretty basic, good explanation is that trauma is when life hands you too much to process all at once. And also kind of this idea of like the rug being pulled out from underneath you. And so it's like everything is okay. And then all of a sudden, whoosh, it's not okay anymore. And that is pretty much what's happening, I think, right now. It's like an overwhelm to our system. So I do somatic. I do somatic trauma therapy, which means that when we say somatic trauma therapy, we basically mean it's how trauma is held in our nervous system. So from that perspective, trauma is not necessarily an event, it's how we hold it in our system. And in this case, it's like an overwhelm to our system. So it's like too much for our system to handle, and it throws us into overwhelm, which then puts us into variations of fight, flight, or freeze. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
No, it is. It is. Personally, I've felt that, there's one part of me that's like, I have all this time. There's all this newfound time. And you see, I see stuff on the internet of like someone's learning French, or they just crocheted a car and taught their dog how to drive. And I haven't been able to get there yet. And as much as I want to use this time productively, and I want to, be learning a new skill, or, honing something that I just didn't have time to do before, I'm having a really hard time getting there. And I've had my suspicions that it's trauma related. But as a therapist, what does that say to you?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think that everybody does, you said it in the beginning, that it is very individual. Everybody does hold trauma in an individual way. Two people can go through the same event and have a different response to it. But I think in general, there is often like a bypass to the gravity of what somebody is experiencing. And so sometimes not always, but sometimes the learning languages and like trying to bake all the bread and trying to like do all these different things, like maybe that is truly somebody's practice and that's truly like something that they really love doing and they're able to really dip into that. But very often I've seen during this that that's a way of people trying to keep busy and trying to do something to distract themselves from the reality that they're living in. There isn't necessarily anything wrong with that. But I think for some people, it's really important to be able to take the time and sit with the discomfort of what's actually happening. And part of what happens in trauma is our system gets thrown into overwhelm. There's too much to process. The rug was pulled out from underneath us, right? And as a result, we get thrown into these variations of fight, flight, or freeze. And in that, we have these like survival mechanisms that keep us from really feeling what it is that's going on, because feeling it would be too much. So we like have a sourdough starter and we like, I don't know, build a new wall outside, or I don't know what people are doing, gardening, and certain things that like some things are really, really helpful for processing. And sometimes people are doing it as a way to avoid processing. So it's really individual and it requires some self-awareness.
Is there anything that you would suggest, for me, for example, is there any sort of metric or anything, I'm a person that likes to solve things and find the answers. And I know sometimes you just can't.
Yes.
But I'm trying to pay attention to what I'm doing and figure out if I'm just trying to keep myself busy or if I'm actually working through things in a productive way. And I'm not entirely sure how to tell the difference right now. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any suggestions.
Yeah. I mean, everything again is so individual, but for you, I feel like honestly, my opinion of how you're handling it is really beautiful. I think you are really, really aware of your feelings around it and you're talking about them and you're open about them. And you're also like doing things that I think are really healthy. Like you are going for runs, and you are like
That
taking
doesn't mean I like it. I still hate running. Just to be clear, I still
even even more so. Like you are doing that. You are inspiring me to buy a clay baker. Like who has ever done that before? So now I've purchased a clay baker and I'm going to make delicious chicken with it. And those are things like you are doing things that are taking care of yourself without avoiding the feelings. So to me, that's kind of the key. It's not like you need to just sit and feel all of the fear all the time. But I think it's good to realize that like there's this jumping out of our skin feeling that we can get when we're going through trauma, or on the other side of it is like dissociation, is depression. It's like we can't move, we can't mobilize ourselves, we can't get out of bed.
I feel like it's been a little bit of each every day. Like I want it to be linear. I want it to be like, all right, I'm getting better. I'm going to be able to like dig in and business stuff really soon and like come up with all these great ideas and whatever. And that's like 1 minute. And then 4 hours later, I am completely defeated. And it's not the linear thing I want it to be. And
Yeah.
I worry. I worry.
Yeah, I mean, it's never linear, and it's interesting because I'm trying to figure out like what direction to take all of this in, because the thing about trauma is that it is really complex and it is I almost want to talk about the window of tolerance so that people can understand a little bit more about what it is.
What is
Um, yeah, so the window of tolerance is, I'm going to draw.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
You've never seen Taryn's drawing skills. This
I am
is
sorry ahead of time.
amazing.
But I think it helps, and you can edit me out later if you want. I love that this is not live because you can just edit me out. Okay, so basically we're all given like a certain capacity for like what life has to hand us. So it's our window of tolerance. So see, that's just our window of tolerance there. This is a little diagram, right? When we are not in like a traumatized self, so we have an intact self, trauma kind of fractures us because it's that rug being pulled out from underneath us. So it kind of like fractures us. Like we tend to like split off a little bit in response so that we don't have to take it all in. And if I'm getting too technical, also tell me that too.
Nope.
But if we are not traumatized or going through a time of trauma, which we are right now, then we can deal with the fluctuations of life, because life is up and down, right? To be alive means you're going to have ups and you're going to have downs and you're going to have neutral at times. So you can handle, oh my gosh, you can handle the ups and downs of life, and it stays within your window of tolerance, meaning you have the capacity to process and handle the fluctuations of life. You have the capacity to go up and down and not get thrown into overwhelm. When you are in a time of trauma, what happens is, because of the effects of that overwhelm on your nervous system, it will jet you far out of your window of tolerance up into what we call high activation, which is like panic, rage, anxiety, that kind of like jittery, I'm going to jump out of my skin feeling, and then down into dissociation, which is like a depressive state. It's a low state. So instead of being able to have the window of tolerance for the ups and downs, we get thrown out of our window of tolerance, which works like that. You are welcome for my skills, my drawing.
I feel like you've drawn a picture of me, and I feel very called out right now.
I have just found this particular type of diagram for the window of tolerance so helpful, because it's just like, that's what's happening, you know? And so a lot of trauma healing and a lot of like working with trauma is the framework of understanding that that's actually what's happening. Because sometimes we just don't understand it. And because we don't understand it, we don't really get why we can't get out of bed or how to mobilize ourselves once we're in that state. We don't get why we can't fall asleep at night, you know?
No, I do. And I think that's exactly sort of why I wanted to talk to you about this. And in this first, short segment, is just to highlight exactly what you just demonstrated with your diagram, is that's what's happening to everybody right now, and on different levels, because everyone experiences it differently. But we've all had the rug pulled out from under us, and to some extent, everyone is experiencing trauma.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And everyone is experiencing it in different ways depending on the situation. And I think for the purpose of this chat, the people you're wanting to reach are small business owners, right?
Small business owners, artists, really anybody. But I feel like when I go out and try to, I can only speak to what I can personally experience. And as a small business owner in the arts and culture sector, I would be remiss to try to stand in the shoes of anyone else. But I think, anyone in entertainment and production, arts and culture and small business is all sort of experiencing the same or similar amounts of just unknown, and it's affecting everyone.
Yeah. And I think that particular industry, you're talking about people who have built long careers. Like, this is not stuff that can be translated to Zoom. Like, it's not just a work at home transition. There is like a tremendous loss that a lot of people are going through, with an unknown of when is that going to be able to be rebuilt? When is that going to come back? Especially people in live events. I know that's what you do a lot of, and an artist whose work relies on those events, and so there is a lot of unknown, and what it leaves you with is a threat to your survival. And any kind of threat to your survival is going to throw you into survival mode. And in survival mode, that's fight, flight, or freeze, different variations. They look very different, but it's a limited capacity state. So it's like, it really can be difficult to focus and learn a language, or focus and try to like build what your next endeavor is going to be, and it's really important to understand that it's okay to not be able to do those things. This does not have to be a time of productivity. In fact, I think that's one of I don't want to try to like spin this time into like a positive thing, because it really is a loss of livelihood for so many people, and it is a loss of identity, and those are really, really difficult things to come into contact with. But we are a culture of productivity, and we are a culture of what is it that you're doing, and it takes people outside themselves already. And you don't need to worry about that right now. Right now is like a time of, just self-care and like simplifying actually. Like my recommendation is not to do more and more and try to learn all the things and take all the courses if that's not something that's right for you. My recommendation is to simplify and slow down and see what arises in there, because we do kind of have to like slow our pace a little bit sometimes. The flip of that, I would say, is that if you can't get out of bed and it's becoming something that you're stuck in, then mobilizing yourself is really important. So moving a little bit, like trying to go for like slow walks, things like that. It's almost like you want to look at it like regulation. So trauma dysregulates your nervous system. So if you're jetting up high, you kind of want to down regulate and try to like slow your pace, put the brakes on, do less, simplify. If you're low and you need to regulate upward, then some movement would help, even if it's just light yoga, even if it's just like a walk around your block or your yard, whatever it is that you're able to do, little bits at a time will bring you back into more of like a present neutral state.
Thank you so much. I don't want to do too much in one sitting, so
Yeah.
we will call that it for today's first chat. And then hopefully we'll be doing another one very soon. And I want to focus that one somewhat on not only, self-regulation, like you began to talk about right now, but how to begin moving through this trauma and sort of figuring out allowing yourself to be different on the other side, and how to figure out how to get from experiencing the trauma to starting to move through it into what may happen on the other side.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for doing this. And I love that you're doing it in these bits and pieces too, because back to that overwhelm thing, right? We don't want to overwhelm in any way right now. So I love that you're doing it in these little chunks. Thank you so much.
You're wonderful. Thank you.
You are.
Bye.